Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi. Real excited tonight because in the early 90s, I was a big fan of General Hospital. This guest tonight was a big part of General Hospital in the early 90s, but General Hospital is only part of what she's done in her career. She's had an amazing career. She was even on the legendary show Dallas. She's been an acting coach for over 20 years. I mean, you name it, she's done it all. And we're going to get to listen to all of that tonight. So it's my honor to introduce to you the one and only actress, acting coach, jack of all trades, Crystal Carson. And Crystal, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
So, Crystal, I think the first, a lot of times I ask each guest this because it's curious to me. Did you have a love for acting as a young kid, or did that just kind of develop in time?
No, I definitely did. I used to make all my neighbors come over and pay a nickel to watch me do puppet shows when I was really little. And when I was 7, my dad died of cancer. And so I would help my mom answer the phone. She took over his business of the Omaha World Herald. She moved it into the back of our house. And so I would answer the phone a lot of times. And back then, you know, it was a landline and it had different buttons on it where you could put it on hold. And so I would entertain the other people that were working in the back of our house by answering the phone. Omaha World Herald, may I help you? And then they would say, I didn't get my paper. And I would say, one moment, please. Let me put you through to the complaint department. And then I would hit hold. And then everybody would look at me like, what is she doing? And then I would hit it, come back, complaint department, can I help you? I just messed with them.
Right.
So,
So I know a lot of, kids in high school, especially, they get into theater, they do the drama, things like that. Did you take part in that when you were in high school and stuff like that?
I definitely did. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first play I did was in first grade. My teacher came up to me and said, would you want to be in a play? We're going to do it after school. And I thought she asked me if I like to play after school. And I said, yes. And then, but my mom needs me to work at home. And she goes, well, let me ask your mom. And so my mom came to pick me up and she said, can Crystal do this play? And my mom said, yes. And I was so surprised because I knew I had all these chores I had to do. Well, it turned out my mom loved the theater. And so I just thought we were playing. I didn't know it. And then it turned out, it was going to be a show and my mom came and loved it. And after that, I figured out a way. I just kept saying, can I take acting lessons? Because I'd learned that's what it was. And that got me out of a lot of chores.
Right. So let me ask you, Crystal, were there any actors when you were a kid that you were influenced by, that you'd watch them and say, wow, I want to do this because of her, because of him? I mean, was there any particular actor that you really loved watching?
Yeah, well, in high school and right after that, Meryl Streep. And I got to meet her one time, which was amazing, but I didn't know who she was. And I had gone to New York and met up with an acting teacher that I had had in summer stock, and they were friends. And she came walking by when we were having lunch, and he, called out to her, and she stopped and kind of said hi. And he introduced me as a young actress. And Meryl was like, "Oh, that's so great. It's so nice that you know David." And I just thought, "Yes, I'm an important actress. I don't know who you are, but you later there was all kinds of questions I wish I would have asked her. Actually, she asked me a couple of questions and I answered with such authority that I'm really embarrassed now about acting, and how I saw it and this, that, and the other.
Right.
I was kind of I was fascinated by acting and by I went and saw a couple of plays with my mom. She took me to a Shakespeare play, and I didn't understand a whole lot of what was going on that stage where I was like 10. But the way she was smiling and everybody laughed, and the way she watched it, I was like, I my dad, I didn't have a dad at that time. And so I was like, I want my mom to look at me like that. I want to be that special for her or whatever. And so I really was interested in acting. And so when I did ask her if I could take a class, I was 10 and she took me to the Lincoln Community Playhouse. And Miss Nanette taught our class, but she was different than the first grade teacher that I had that taught the class, because the first grade teacher knew that parents weren't paying for the class and that they were going to love us no matter what we did. And she didn't have to worry about them not coming back again, to school or whatever, or paying her salary. So when she taught us, I was Piglet and Winnie the Pooh, and she would say, how does it feel to you that Pooh won't share his honey? And, why do you think you like a bear instead of liking another pig? And all these questions that I would dig into, because this is how we did a lot of improv, and it was an amazing teacher, this first grade teacher. And then when I was at the Playhouse, Miss Nanette knew that if the play wasn't good, the parents probably weren't going to sign their kids back up again. Little did she know it was really more babysitting for my mom than anything else. But so she did not ask us, how does the wind feel when it blows through your leaves when you're playing a tree? She just said, say the lines like this, say the lines like that. And I thought that was really boring, that she was asking us how to say it. We had to memorize these lines, which we had to memorize them in Winnie the Pooh too. But by the time we memorized them, it was like we thought through it. So it just seemed like the most natural thing to say. But in this case, all these lines were weird and we didn't know why we were saying them. And she didn't answer why we were saying them. And we were kids, couldn't figure it out. And she just kept telling us what words to emphasize. And I didn't appreciate it. And I told her so. I said, I don't think this is how we're supposed to do these plays, because I knew play by then. You play at it.
Right.
And this wasn't fun. And she got tired of me pretty soon. And about the third time I interrupted her and said, but why would the tree, say it like that? I said, well, I think that, you need to tell me why, or I won't be having fun, is what I basically said. And she said, if you think you can teach this class better than I can, why don't you go to the front desk and get your own class? I was so amazed that she thought I was so wonderful, that I should have my own class. So I went marching up to the front desk and I told them, Miss Nanette thinks I should have my own class to teach. And they were like, what? And about that time, the parents were picking up their kids. And I turned to one of my friends and I said, do you want to be in my class? And the parent said, oh, you're going to teach a class here? What time is your class? Well, it worked out that school got over at 3:15 and Miss Nanette didn't start class until 4:30. So all these parents had to sit in the Playhouse parking lot with their kids until it started. So the front desk said, she's starting it at 3:30. And I got my first acting class that I taught. I was the coach at 10 years old, just about 11.
And, you were kind of young, obviously. Well, you were young, but,
Rat.
was there ever a thought, like when you did that first teaching that first acting class at 11 years old, that, hey, maybe years from now, this will be something I want to do for a career? Because we know you got into acting, but was there ever a thought at 11 years old that someday you wanted to be an acting coach, or were you just too young to really?
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Right.
So I was kind of too young, but I thought, oh, actors must help other actors. And I knew directors talked, and said those kind of things because my first grade teacher was our director.
Right.
So I thought maybe I'd be a director. But then I realized that what she did was sit in the audience and I wanted to be up on stage. So I kind of forgot all about that. And it wasn't until after I left General Hospital and I was pregnant and that I was like, what can I do where I can be pregnant. So that's when I started teaching acting
Right.
and becoming an on-set acting coach and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So, Crystal, take me back. When you're finishing high school, what was the mindset for you when you graduated? I mean, what did you want to do at that point?
Broadway.
Yeah.
I told my mom that I wanted to go to New York and go to school, and she said, "Well, then you better get a big scholarship because we don't have the money for you to do that." And I didn't know how it all worked. My school didn't encourage me to do that, and and they didn't really know how it worked either, honestly. And so I ended up not getting in on the auditions on time. You had to audition, which I didn't know. I had submitted,
Right.
I just messed it all up. And so I thought, well, I'm going anyway. And so I told my mom I was going anyway. And I was a waitress, and I heard a dancer, a young girl who had just gotten out of college, um, and her mom was talking about how they were going to drive to New York the next day. And I said, "Can I go with you?" And they said, "Sure, can you drive a stick?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I helped them, and we drove out, and my mom was like, "You you should not do that. I don't know who these people are." And so I just kind of called my boyfriend and asked him to drive me to a friend's house, and he didn't know what I was doing, and I kind of ran away. Now, I was 18, so it
Right.
wasn't really that, but it was kind of naughty.
And
And then I went to NYU. Uh, I didn't go to NYU. I went to the building of NYU and I went in and I said, "I missed all of this, but I really need to be here in this school." And they were like, "No, it's too late." And I said, "Well, I'm not leaving until you let me in." And they let me sit there forever. And then they were closing up the building and they kind of threw me out. And so I was on the front steps and I said, "I'm going to sleep on these steps until you let me in." And they said, "Go ahead." And they just stepped right over me. So that lasted about 2 days and I decided that was not going to work. So I
right.
ended up applying to Long Island University. And my plan was to start there and then work my way to New York. And they gave me I don't know what happened, but somehow I got in even though the classes had started. They let me in and they gave me a scholarship. And so
Right.
that's how I got into the theater arts there. And then I think Reagan got into office and cut back on the arts. Yeah, and I lost my scholarship. So
Right.
then so then I thought, okay, I'll go to Chicago and I'll go to I don't know where I get these ideas. I was like, I'm gonna go to a great big school. And I had what is it, DePaul, Goodman Theater, right? And then I found out that there was a teacher there who was like Dick Nichols was his name, and he was like a big deal there. And that he was, for some reason, going to do a stint at the University of Nebraska. And I'm like, what? So it would be like going to that school because I'll get that guy. And so I went to UNL, and I was from Nebraska, so I could get in there for cheap. And I took classes with Dick Nichols, and I did think he was just brilliant. And he had us read a book, couple, lots of books, No Acting Please, and all these things. But one of them was written by Eric Morris, and so I decided I would come out to LA and study with Eric Morris. Um, but I wasn't sure how I was going to make all that happen. And then in making such a short story long, um, in Nebraska, if you want to do summer stock, which I had done every summer, it would do regular, school, and then in the summer I would do summer stock. You would go to a thing called URTAs, University Regional Theater Auditions. So instead of driving to all these different theaters in the Midwest to do summer stock, they all go to one place, and then you audition for 100 people at once.
Right.
And so I did that my last year of college, and there was a agent there by the name of Victor Perillo, who was Gary Coleman's agent. That was kind of
Right.
his big star. And he said, "I want to sign you." So he flew me out to LA, and I'm like, perfect. I'm going to study with Eric Morris. And I don't know, the rest is history.
So I look at your career, Crystal, and I'm going to go through so many things that stand out to me. And the first is, I know you weren't what you want to say have a big part in the movie, but you were an extra in the movie. Was the terms of endearment, and I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
just to be in a movie with successful actors like Jack Nicholson and Shirley MacLaine. I mean Shirley MacLaine. I mean that is just the start. If you start your career with something like that, even if you're not being seen by the audience that much, just the fact that you get some type of part in that movie, that's a big deal. So I just, and I'm going to get to more, but I always felt like everything you did, it wasn't just like small, it was definitely big, even if you know it wasn't a lot of scenes. Less is more sometimes.
Yeah, it was incredible to be on that set and watch Deborah Winger and Shirley MacLaine, and it was just amazing. And even when I wasn't in the scene, I would I knew enough people that were in other scenes that I knew where they were going to be. So I would go by and wherever that was and get myself on the set and just watch from the side. And then they shot in the place where I was waitressing, where I met the dancer and her mom who we drove to New York. They shot in that restaurant, and so I got in there and watched again and worked my way into the set again as another extra. But I just wanted to watch them.
Right. And I mean, if nothing else, even if you didn't have like a big part in that movie and you're just an extra, just watching them, you're getting to learn stuff.
Yeah.
You take everything in. And even if you're not, you know, making a lot of money for that film, just the fact that you're getting that experience, because you got to get your foot in the door somewhere, that's a big deal. And I know there was a woman by the name of Sharon Gabet. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but she took notice and she helped you get an audition for the soap opera Edge of the Night, correct?
How do you know that? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. And
Yeah, she did.
that was a big deal. And I wanted to ask you too, Crystal. We'll talk about General Hospital soon, but soap operas in general. I had Michael Lerman on the other night from the
Oh, yeah.
Waltons, and towards the end of her career, she was on One Life to Live and All My Children for like a few months. She had played like a judge on that show. And she told me she was fascinated by just the amount of work those actors put in, because she said they work endlessly and it's exhausting. So just tell me how different it is doing soap operas as opposed to doing like TV series.
It's different because you have so many so many pages and not very long to shoot them. There's no rehearsal. It's well, actually, when Wendy Rich came on, we did have rehearsals for a while.
Right.
Yeah, I was trying to think if that was true. Yeah, it was. Or was it Gloria? No. But anyway, yeah, no, it was Gloria. Sorry, I'm lying to you.
Yeah.
We used to run the whole show, which is very unique, I think, for a soap. We would run the whole show in the morning. We'd get there, ridiculous hour and start at 6. You had to be ready and then run the whole show. And then we would tape the whole show after lunch. And then when Wendy came on, we didn't do that anymore. We would just block it, shoot it, block it, shoot it. Sometimes block it, rehearse it, shoot it, but not that often. By the time we blocked it, we were pretty much knew what we were going to do and we just did it. But that meant that you had to be rehearsing all the time downstairs with in the green room, figuring things out because you didn't know what the blocking would be yet. But just kind of moving around and just making sure that you and the actor had that relationship and kind of knew what the beats were and knew your lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But on a TV show, you've got a lot more time to rehearse because they don't shoot quite that fast and you're going to do different setups, meaning you're going to shoot it in close up and then you're going to shoot a wide shot. And then, well, depends too. It depends on if it's a drama or if you're doing sitcom. Sitcom, they don't do it that way, but it's more like a play where you have many days of rehearsal and then you have the live audience. But they're all really fun. And
right.
I love it all for different reasons.
Right.
And what I love about being an acting coach on top of that is that I'm often playing all the other parts.
Yeah.
So having come from soap where I was playing one role for every day, kind of interesting because you got to do a deep dive, but kind of boring compared to being a coach where I was doing analysis for them for the whoever they were playing and figuring out what motivates that character while also playing all the other parts myself so they had something to react off of because it really helps the actor to hear how somebody else would be responding to them. Acting is reacting, as they say. So I don't know, I thought that was really challenging and really fun. I still think it's really fun.
Right. And, again, the Edge of the Night, in a lot of ways, to me, it opened doors for you. And two films that you did that really stood out to me, and they were a lot of fun to watch. Number one was the Zero Boys. Your character
Ooh,
Trish was
yeah.
phenomenal. You know,
Aw,
it
thank
really
you.
was. Played a great part. And then here's what I talk about. I'm going to start with this right here. I told you about Terms of Endearment. Now I'm going to start with this. Your first kind of big movie role in a way. Who's That Girl? You played Denice, but you're playing in a movie with Madonna, who is as hot as any entertainer at that time. Like, she was as popular as anybody. She was, you know, the person in music that kids, young adults, they wanted to see. So getting to play that movie, Who's That Girl? That had to be something pretty neat for you.
Yeah, that was right after I came to town too, so I was just getting I was from Nebraska. There was a time zone change and everything in LA, and then I'm finally getting my feet under me and know what's going on and have an apartment, and then I'm flying to New York to shoot Who's That Girl, and that was my first panic attack because I just could not. It was too many things happening all at once. I was so amazed that I booked that, and then it shot right away, and it was really fun. But but I did have a panic attack, and I kind of fainted on set,
Yeah.
and I woke up and I was in a limo with Madonna and somebody driving the limo and her um, like a person assistant or something was with us, and she's shoving a lollipop in my mouth, and she's like, "You have low blood sugar. You have low blood sugar. Eat this." And I'm like, well, "What is happening?" I was like, "Am I dreaming right now?" And we pull up in front of a brownstone, and she opens up the door. "Come on, come on, come on." I'm like, "What is happening?" And they're rushing me into this down these steps into this brownstone. It turned out her doctor or some doctor, I think, was there. I think he was a doctor. But he started to try to give me a shot, and I didn't know what they were doing. I was like, "Ah!" And I was kicking and hitting, and Madonna's like, "Give it to her." And then the doctor's like, "No, no, no. She's too upset. No, no, no." And then she's like, "Give it to me then." It was a B12. It turned out to be a B shot, but I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know what was going on. And the next day I saw Madonna. Anyway, I got through all of that. And the next day I saw Madonna like 4 in the morning with curlers in my hair, and she had curlers in her hair, and neither one of us had been to makeup yet. And I just said, I walked by her and I went, "Get away from me." And she goes, "You look like a drowned rat. I'm not coming near you." And then I started laughing. And the next day we had to have a bunch of extras on set. And so they had to move some of us out of our trailer, and let the extras get their makeup done in the makeup trailer. And they said, somebody's got to move into Madonna's trailer. And she goes, "Her." So I went into the Madonna's trailer and got my makeup done in there. And then her songs would come on the radio, and I would go, "Oh, who is this horrible person singing is like a cat. Somebody's killing a cat." And she would like, "It's great, turn it up," and hit me, and we got along really great.
Yeah, and let me ask you, once you got comfortable being around her, you got to joke with her and stuff. But when you found out you're going to play this movie with her, were you nervous? Because, like I said, she was as hot as anybody at the time. I mean, she really was.
Yeah, I was nervous. And we had scenes in the movie where they ended up all getting cut because it was too long, and I don't know. But I was really nervous because I was like, "What's happening? Like, how is this happening so fast?" And yeah,
So,
um,
yeah, I mean,
it was fun. I mean, it all went great, and everybody was very kind, and it was so exciting, and all the fans on the road, were being held back by police while we were shooting, and I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for a living. This is how it's going to go. I don't know. I mean, I was so lucky when this all started. I met Meryl Streep. I got to meet, Jack Nicholson and blah blah blah. Everything you just said, just so lucky. Eh, Flown to LA, driven by my agent had a girl, and she drove me around in a white Cadillac and took me to 5 auditions a day, and I had no idea that it wasn't like that for everyone. And so I had a great time, and I booked a lot of stuff because I had nothing at stake. It all just seemed preordained and easy. And then one day, it wasn't. And then I woke up, and now that I coach actors, I see how hard it is for when they come out. All the things that I didn't really have to deal with. I realize now how lucky I was.
right. And now another example of this is what I mean about your career, that for somebody who was a young actress, still trying to get her feet wet, it seemed like everything that you were on, though, you played an important part. And now Dallas was, like I said, iconic show, lasted 13 seasons. And you get this part where it's kind of cool because your character, Elaine, is playing Sue Ellen Ewing in a movie that Sue Ellen had made to kind of blackmail JR with if he ever tried to take John Ross or whatever, or if he ever tried to, like, play games with her anymore. And you're getting to play Sue Ellen Ewing, who at that time, she really was the first lady of Dallas. I know Miss Ellie, Miss Ellie was, but really it was Sue Ellen. She was JR's wife, and you get to play this, and you're getting to play like JR's wife, and you're getting to do on screen with a JR lookalike, whatever. I mean, that's another great part to get, and you're on prime time Friday nights where that show was as popular as anybody.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I got to spend a lot of time with Linda because I had to try to do her, try to
Yeah.
move like her, and find her airy voice and her accent, and try to do it the same way, and have my hair colored like hers and cut like hers. It was really interesting because I hadn't played a real person before, so I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, and let me ask you, just being around that set now, again, you really were spending a lot of time with Linda, but I always heard Larry Hagman was such a funny guy. Patrick Duffy was a funny guy, and you're getting to be around this cast, and these guys have been around together forever. So still, even though they're making you feel like you're one of the, you know, cast members, it's still a little intimidating because these are people that have been playing this role for over 10 years. I mean, again, intimidating but excited at the same time, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I knew part of what made me so excited is I knew my mom liked that show. And so she was going to be thrilled that I was on it. And I took pictures with Larry Hagman and sent them to her. And I don't know why he was doing this, but on this day, he had a bicycle and he was riding it all around the set and through the set and around outside, and somehow I ended up on the handlebars of that bicycle, and we went riding all over the place. And I was just like, he's going to kill me. He's going to crash, and this is where I die. But I didn't. But I did send a picture of that to my mom, so that
Now,
was
I would hope one important thing you got to do during your few episodes on that show. Did you get to take a tour of the South Fork Ranch?
I didn't. No.
No. Now, see, I mean, everybody says it's beautiful,
Yeah.
so I thought you might do that. But just
No.
getting to be on a show like that, and again, you're getting to play this important character, and it was kind of cool for the audience to get to see somebody playing Sue Ellen besides Linda Gray. It was really cool. And you played it well, and again, you
Thank
sounded
you.
just like her.
Aw.
So, I mean, this again opened more doors. And now I get to the most important part because you get this great role on General Hospital. But here's the thing too, that's why I think that you should be proud of who you are as an actress, because of every time you went on a new series or a soap opera or whatever, you're playing with iconic people. And Tony Geary had just come back to General Hospital, but he has to play a different part. He can't play Luke because there's no Laura. So he's playing this character, Bill Eckhart. And your character, Julie has a, romantic encounter with him. So you're working with probably the most famous actor in daytime at the time, him and Susan Lucci.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that had to be like something where maybe you didn't know it at the time, but years later, you're like, wow, look at all
I
the
knew
parts.
it at the time because when I was in grade school, my best friend, her mom watched General Hospital. Was it grade school? Maybe it was, yeah, last year of grade school, first year of junior high. Her mom watched General Hospital, and we would get out of school at 3:15, and I think it started at 3. So we would run as fast as we could because we knew we were going to miss the first 15 minutes to watch Luke and Laura. And so when I found out that I was auditioning to play Tony Geary's girlfriend at the time, that would turn into be a love interest, I was like, oh, I have to get this. I have to get this. I even was looking to buy a house, and I remember telling the real estate agent even before I auditioned for it, is this how fast can I get to General Hospital from this? Is there a good way to get there? Because maybe I shouldn't live in this area. I'm going to be on General Hospital. And she was like, "Oh, you are? Yeah, I'm going to play, Tony Geary's love interest." I don't know why I thought I was going to get it, but I was just sure of it. And I did.
And you know what I think was important too, Crystal, is when at the time you came on, Lynn Herron was about to exit General Hospital for a while. So they didn't have Lucy Coe, who was the bad girl of General Hospital. So your character had to come in and kind of be that Lucy Coe character. She was kind of like the bad girl of General Hospital. But one thing about soap operas, and I wanted to get your take on this, because in soap operas, it is nothing like real life. You could die 100 times, come back to life. You could be a terrible person. You could murder, and then they find redemption for you. You could scheme and do all these crazy things as your character did. And yet, when your character came back the second time around 97 or 98, she had kind of found redemption. She became a better sister to her sister, Brenda. So, I mean, what is your take on soap operas? I mean, they can get a little crazy with the storylines, but what do you think about them? I mean, because it really isn't what real life is, but at the same time, I think sometimes fans just need life, when they're watching stuff, not to always be real either.
I think soap operas bring out like the characters in the soap operas are like the worst of us and the best of us.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you just said is that you can find redemption. And I think that's such an important lesson for all of humanity. If you, no matter how bad somebody is, they're not a bad person. They're just making the wrong choice at the time because they think it's what they have to do to survive or something. I think that's how we all feel. I don't think we purposefully go out to be terrible people. And so I love that about the soaps. And nobody's ever going to be as bad to you as the soaps are to the soap characters are to each other. So if you go, wow, well, that person, did all these horrible things, faked her own death and then had an affair and he still took her back. So maybe I can forgive my husband or my best friend or my whatever. That's what I kind of hope.
And it was kind of, cool the way they developed your character, because like I said, you have these scenes with Tony, you have this great dialogue with him, because you really did. I mean, it was a great, and she was not afraid of Bill Eckhart at all. She would stand up for
herself. Harlan Barrett's daughter.
Yeah. But here's the other thing. You go from Bill Eckhart to Ned Ashton, then to AJ Quartermain, who just like a young kid. So it is funny, like the love interest that they had your character do over the years, you know, hang out with and stuff like that. But I really enjoyed your character's dialogue with the character Jax back in like
Oh,
'97.
yeah.
You know, she's very bitter at him. She blames him for Brenda's death and stuff like that. And you finally saw your character, you know, Julie, have that where she had a conscience, she had a soul, and she had a big heart because she had a lot of regret because she felt like she never treated Brenda like a person. She treated her like a little sister too much.
Well, yeah, or like a naughty little sister. Never gave her
Yeah,
a break.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about your time on that show though, because I think you were on it the first time from like '91 to '93, and the show was always popular, but now the teenagers were really starting to watch it more in the '90s. You know, they were kind of implementing those teenagers more. You
Yeah.
know, the Steve Burton, Kimberly, people like
Right.
that. They were starting to kind of take over a little bit, and you were on at a time where I felt like kids were, you know, high school kids especially, were watching that show every day after school.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why we got to act, be in so many scenes and talk to, like, Brenda in that case, but
Right.
to really talk to her about, being careful around certain men. I was always scolding her about being loose with money, about not drinking, not doing drugs, staying out too late. When she first came on the show, she was in supposed to be in school, and I was always giving her trouble about her homework. I felt like it was probably what kids were hearing from their own parents, but if they weren't, I think it was good they were hearing it from Julia.
Right.
Because I
Yeah.
know they associated themselves with Brenda. She was really popular and had a big following of young people. So I hope that as I don't know, nagged her, I guess, but I wasn't terrible to her. I didn't, but I nagged her a lot and didn't let her grow up. But hopefully, I was raising, a lot of American teenagers to be better people as I nagged them on TV too.
Right. And the thing about you, Crystal, is or your career didn't end after General Hospitals. I've seen so many actors, they leave soap operas or their time in soap operas comes to an end and you never see them again. And unfortunately, you don't. Like
Mm,
it's hard for them to get work sometimes,
yeah.
but you continued to work. You were on shows such as Cheers, Charles in Charge, and then you had a great recurring role on the series Jag, which was very popular. So, I mean, you were able to, you know, stand the test of time and continue to work. But what I find your greatest work, and we talked about it a little bit, you know, this 11-year-old kid being an acting coach, but I really believe what you've done as an acting coach is your greatest legacy. And I'll tell you why, because I mean, look at what you know you've done seminars forever at the University of Nebraska, which is tremendous. You've even been over at Vietnam for
Yes.
the international film school, things like that. But what's really cool more than anything else is you have what you're basically doing is when you're like teaching them the rules of the game, how to get better as an actor, and you see them performing. I think of Paula Abdul because you know, were her acting coach.
It was.
You have to smile when you're watching somebody like her act and you're saying, you know what? I helped her along the way. Like, you know, she
Mhm.
was one of my students. And to see that, that has to be so rewarding for you, not as an acting coach, but as a person more than anything else.
As both, let me tell you, I'm just so proud of these actors and the work they put in and how much they care and strive and challenge themselves. It's a rough business, rougher than it was for me, I think. And uh, people, they keep at it and they don't take no for an answer. They sometimes feel like they haven't worked in a while. And so it starts to feel like they're getting negative feedback, but they keep at it. And I keep telling them it's not, it's not negative feedback that you don't book it. It's positive feedback that you got to call back. It's positive feedback that you got to audition in the first place because they've seen some of your work before. It's positive, but it's hard to remind yourself, to work on your own mind and stay at something when you're not sure it's going to work out for you. And then when it does, I'm just so happy for them.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud to see the work they do.
Right. Now, you were at the Margie Haber studios for 12 years. Talk about that experience, because that's a long time to be at one place. But
Yeah.
just talk about that experience, because I know that was very gratifying for you.
Well, it was wonderful because there was so much going on. There's a lot of actors there. And so I was always coaching. People were coming in and signing up and wanting me to coach them. And I would also meet with managers. I met with Halle Berry's manager for Monster. She didn't end up using me. They decided I was too young. I'll take that. Brad Pitt came in and for Thelma and Louise, and I was going to work with him, and Margie said, "Who's that cute boy?" And I said, "Brad Pitt." And she goes, "Oh, with a name like Pitt, I didn't think he'd look like that. I'll take him." And she took him. And she
Funny,
goes,
he was on Dallas briefly too, but
"Was he?"
oh yeah, he was the character Charlie's boyfriend. You know, Ray Krebs wanted to throw him out of the house because he didn't want him with Charlie. So yeah, that was
Oh
one of
my
the first.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of ironic you brought him up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's funny. But it was great because I loved, again, that's where I took the master class with Margie and I watched how she coached, and I took everything from that I knew from my past and added it. And she asked me to work there because when I was in the master class, uh, they would pick 3 actors to critique, and then Margie would critique. And a lot of times after I critiqued somebody, Margie would say, "I have nothing to add to that." So she's like, "Do you want to work for me?" And I'm like, "Yes." So I can do that and have a baby. So that's perfect. So
right.
that's what I did. Yeah, after I left the show and was pregnant. And then I got hired by Fox TV to work on a show called The Inside, which
Yeah,
was, a series that didn't really air too much because it was really good, but a new head of the studio came in, and he said, I want to air my shows. So I think we aired maybe 6 out of the 12 we'd shot, and it was gone. But it
yeah,
was very popular while it was on. What was I bringing that up for? Oh, because there I had my own trailer. I could work with the actors in my trailer or on set, and then I could have my child as she grew up with me there. So
right.
that was really fun. And I could have actors come on the set at Fox and coach them too for outside things when I wasn't working with one of the leads on the show. So I
Right.
loved that.
Exactly. And then you eventually went to Heart Studio. Um, Talk about that experience, because here's the thing. I like I said, I think you've had over 20 years of being an acting coach.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing of it is like I mentioned, you know,
Longer.
all these seminars you do, you know, you're doing all these different types of things, helping these aspiring actors. One thing I wanted to ask you though is, as an acting coach, what do you challenge to your students? Like, what do you want them to do when they show up each day? What are you asking out of them for the time they're there?
I don't want them to memorize their lines and figure out how to say them and say them. For me, that's going back to Miss Nanette almost. They're
Yeah,
deciding what words to hit and how to emphasize something. And, I hate that. So for me, I want them to ask all the questions. What do I want from this person that I'm talking to? And as I'm listening to how they're talking back to me, am I getting what I want or am I not getting what I want? And then allowing that relationship to change you. So maybe you thought you would say a line like this. As you were memorizing it, you can't help but kind of get a pattern. Um, not memorizing it, but as you go over it, you start to just know it, and you have an anticipation of what they might do. So you start to get into a bit of a pattern, but to stay open to if they said it a different way than what you thought would come, or even if they don't, to just notice that in this moment, they're looking at you a certain way. And that makes you say it like this, letting that they call it Meisner technique, that taking in and letting it change you. And so I had a lot of Meisner training, and I really believe in that. And the other thing I do is I really teach not to memorize, because if you don't know what to say, and my actors hate this, I make them make it up. Say what, think in character. What
Yeah.
would you say right now? Listen to it again. What would you say right now? What do you want? What's at stake for you? And once they say something, your mind has to generate that idea. And so all kinds of thoughts and considerations go through your head. And then if you see the line and it's different, instead of going, oh, that's the line, let me think about the line, what happens is, because you were doing all this consideration up here, that's where you spent your time, instead of the line getting fixed, the thought process gets fixed. And when the thought process gets fixed, then the line comes out correctly, but you know what it took to generate that. So you're more human than someone who's just holding back, listening for their cue, saying what they've memorized. What's human in that, right? So
Right.
that, particularly because I teach audition technique even more than I teach acting, and
Yeah.
film and television far more than I teach theater. Those are things that have to happen really fast. You have to step into these shoes really fast. Like in the theater, you might have, especially Broadway, you might have 3 months to rehearse something. But in this case, you're not going to have that. You got to come ready to go, and then be open to taking in what you're getting and responding to it using the words, rather than saying it, delivering the line the way you pre-planned it. 'Cause to me, there's nothing more boring than watching somebody deliver a line the way they pre-planned it. You can just see the eyes are blank. There's not the expressions. They're not touched. They're not moved.
Yeah.
Um, it's very hard to fake being a live human being. You end up coming off kind of robotic. And when you are a live human being, what you don't say is way more powerful than what you do say. If I say to you a line, if I say, I really like you, okay, that's information. But if I say to you, I
Right.
really like you,
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah.
it means a lot. Yeah.
Right.
And you said yeah before I even got to the words, because that's where your humanity then starts to generate. When did this happen to you? What is she not saying? What you have to use your own imagination to
Yeah.
generate what I'm going to say, and it brings up your past, and you click with me, then you connect to the character. So that's the way I have actors approach it. And I think different than a lot of acting teachers or audition technique teachers, but it works.
Right. And I would think this too, Crystal. You can't sugarcoat anything with these students either. You have to be honest with them. So sometimes they're not always going to want to hear, they're not always going to like what they hear from you. But if you're not honest with them, you're not being a good coach either.
I just recently heard I was mean. I'm like, I am. They're like, well, not really, but sometimes. I'm like, okay, well, I don't mean to be mean, but I do have to tell you what's what.
Right. You really do. I mean, it's the only way it's going to work. And I mean, you've proven, I mean, like I said, the list of people that you've worked with, Rachel Nichols, Paula, David, I can't pronounce his name, but like Barinas, something
We're
like
very honest.
that. Yeah, Barinas. And here's the thing, like they wouldn't be as good of actors as they are if you just told them everything they wanted to hear. You know, sometimes I'm sure they appreciate the positive feedback, even when it seems like negative feedback.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The people who complain, which isn't, not that often,
Right.
um, are usually the least successful. And
Yeah.
the ones that, go, right, okay, I see that. Ouch, but I see that. Okay. And just, they all make it. They all do well. So
Right.
there is something to that. I hadn't really thought about Michael, you're so good.
Like,
in
uh,
in I'm trying to think of the word that I'll think of it later.
well, anyway,
It's not
Crystal,
intuitive, but something like that.
right. One of the, I talk about perseverance, going through tough times and, having to kind of scratch and crawl and things like that. And as great of, as good of an actor as you've been, tremendous acting coach, you had another challenge in your life that, listen, acting can't help you with this. It's unfortunate, but you've had to really battle a tough illness. Just talk about that a little bit because I know you're still kind of going through that, but you've
Yeah.
always had a positive outlook, and I have to believe that one thing people sometimes forget when somebody's battling cancer, you know, you're going through these treatments, and these treatments sometimes are just unbearable. Like, I've seen my father go through it recently, and it's
Oh,
with the chemo and everything else. So it's not easy. But what motivates you to? I mean, obviously your will to live, sure, your
yeah.
daughter, your husband, but I mean, it's not easy trying to overcome a very, I don't want to say fatal illness, but a very tough illness to, you know, overcome. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Um, Boy, it's a good thing when I first was told that I had breast cancer that I didn't really know what was on the horizon. And I thought, okay, well, take it out. Let's move on. And that was 4.5 years ago, and it's still not over.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a little bit more tragic than it had to be because
They misdiagnosed it, didn't they?
how did you know that? Yeah, they
Yeah.
did.
I mean, I read up on it and
You really do your homework. I'm impressed with you.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. But that's the toughest thing, Crystal, to me. And like, listen, I'm no doctor. I'm not here to criticize doctors, but we all do put our faith in what they, tell us. And when they give us news that, oh, there's nothing catastrophic, you're okay, and stuff like that, and then you find out that you're not okay, it
Yeah.
is frustrating because you are dependent on them to give you the results that you need to know what's going on with you.
Yeah. And it was my report, I guess, got mixed up with somebody else's.
Yeah.
And yeah. So she miraculously was cured when they went in to look at her tumor because she never had one.
Right.
And I, meanwhile, didn't think I had anything. And when I asked, they said, "Well, did we call you?" And I said, "No." "Well, you're fine then. I'm sure the mammogram was great. Don't worry about it." And then when it was time for a year later for me to go in, it was COVID. And they were saying, it'll be over in 2 weeks. So I thought, oh, 2 weeks, I can wait. So I canceled my appointment, and then I ended up waiting about 6 months before I scheduled it. And then the radiologist was like, "Why didn't you come back 18 months ago when you knew you had a tumor?" And I'm like, "Ha, you're funny." Because I was kind of joking with him earlier, and he wasn't joking. So yeah, it was harder at that point. It would have been stage 1 instead of stage 3 or 4. We're not sure which it is yet, but
Right. But I mean, listen, I'm no doctor or anything like that, but you know, you look good, you look healthy. So I mean,
thank
it
you.
does it does seem like to me that the treatments are working because I mean, you look like I said, you look great. You don't look unhealthy, and I think
Got
too
my hair
though,
back. My hair grew back
yeah.
so
But
fast.
I would think that the positivity that you've had in your life forever, that there has to be something to that in why you're doing so well with this. And listen, medicine obviously is the big reason. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah,
But
right.
if you go into it with a negative attitude, it's going to be harder to beat. And to me, 4.5 years, one thing you know for sure is you are conquering this, even though it's a struggle. You are beating it because you're here 4.5 years later, and that's how you got to look at it.
Yeah. And you know what? It's been interesting. As somebody who's coached characters that supposedly had cancer, I did it wrong. I'm
Right.
like, wow, okay, I get this now. So I did kind of learn a lot, and in that way was fascinated by it and kept a positive attitude, just tried to see it as a learning experience. But I never hope I hope they don't find anything. I mean, I it was
Yeah.
hard. All that radiation, all the chemo,
Yeah.
the horrible pills. I'm off of most of them now. I'm only down to 3, and like I said, I should be able to get off those in the next, about year and a half. So hopefully, they'll tell me then if I have to do it another 5 years, but
Right. And how are you feeling right now? You feel great, or I
I
mean,
do. I feel really
yeah,
good.
yeah,
I felt really bad yesterday, so I'm glad that this is today.
right.
And I don't know why, but I just can't get any energy. I can't hardly get out of bed. Just my body's fighting and
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And
but
I
I
think that's, like I said, Crystal, I think that, you know, that's one thing. And like, listen, nobody should ever have to go through it. I don't care who it is. Like, it's terrible for anybody. But I think that you can give people that are going through it and listen, if they're listening to this, hope, because you are, you know, like I said, you're getting up every morning, you're doing what you have to do. And even when it's a rough day, you're
yeah.
not letting it defeat you. And I think that goes back to a lot of things. Like, I wanted to talk about your mom just briefly because she was a single mom for most of your childhood,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and she did a great job. And then I think your husband, your daughter, I mean, think about like all the things that happen for a reason in your life. You meet your husband basically because you had a flat tire and he helped you change, outside a restaurant. So I mean, it's those things. But like when you have that support system and you see what your mother went through, just raising you and doing a great job with that and stuff like that, that you've had these life lessons. And I think that's why you're able to do the things you're doing in your life and being able to fight this thing.
Too, my father died of cancer. And
Yes.
there is a part of this whole thing that's like, oh, this is what that was like for him. It's kind of makes me feel closer to him. When I'm having bad days like yesterday, I talk to him and it I don't know, it brings us closer. I know that sounds weird because he's gone, but it's been great. That has been really a new experience and a beautiful experience. And it's funny too, when I left General Hospital, one of the things that I did was I started Take a Chance with the Stars. Did I
Yeah.
tell did
Yeah.
you knew
Oh
this?
yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I thought I had one on yet. Yeah, to raise money for the American Cancer
Yeah.
Society.
Yeah. And that was
And
a great thing. It
did
really
you
was.
ever go? Did you ever
Was
go to one?
not yet, but I would love to. I mean, they seem like great things. I mean, listen, I look at it this way, that these type of functions, events, they help cancer patients because they know they're not alone. They know it's like,
Yeah.
there's like a group of them that are going through all this stuff. And when you don't have to do things alone, it makes things a little easier. Listen, it's not going to heal everybody, but at the same time, you don't feel like, you're just wasting away.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a part of something.
Right, exactly.
And we
Um,
raised good money for the American Cancer Society, and I'll always be proud of that.
right.
And proud of my fellow actors too, who all came out and supported that event every year, and it just made it special.
Yeah,
So I
it
thought it was
really.
ironic when I got cancer. I was like, okay, maybe I've already paid for my treatment by putting all this money into research.
And it's really a great cause. I mean, it really is. But let me ask you, Crystal. You're not going to stop working, and like I said, you're not letting what you're going through stop you from doing what you love. You love to teach. You love to act. What can we look forward to for Crystal Carson in the next few months? I mean, I obviously, are you going to go on? I know like the traveling must be difficult sometimes, but are you going to continue to travel and speak at these seminars and you know?
Well, uh, Up until now, I just was always afraid I'll have a bad day, on the day I need to be there and up and ready. So I haven't been, but day before yesterday, I was feeling pretty good. And they've had some airline cheap flights lately, so I went ahead and signed up to go to Atlanta, and I reached out to a couple of actors that are now based in Atlanta, saying I'm forcing myself to go teach something. I'm not sure that I can do what I normally do, but maybe I can do kind of a lesser version of that or something. And they were very excited. And I said, I just have to reach out. I was teaching at the University of Georgia was letting me use their facilities. And so I have to reach out to them and see if the people I know are still there.
Yeah.
And before I even and I actually did reach out and they were gone. But before I even like went, okay, now what do I got to do? Another acting coach out of Atlanta reached out and said, "My studio, if you want to come, my studio is yours." So I have to reach out and tell him I'll take him up on that and thank you. But that's just a sign, I think, a sign. I don't know, I believe in that. And I feel like I've had a lot of divine intervention on my journey that's let me know what to do next. And so I'll be in Atlanta in October and November teaching a class. And I was walking today and I thought, I might even look at if there's some small independent films or something like that, maybe doing an audition again myself and playing a role in something. That would be kind of fun.
Well, I could tell you this much, Crystal. I would love to see you, even in the short term, love to see you have one last, hurrah on
Yeah.
General. Because I
Oh,
think,
on General Hospital.
I think it would really be cool. And I would really love to see, you know, Miss Barrett. Well, it would kind of be weird considering her sister was with him for so long, but I would love to see your character and Sonny and Maurice Bernard's character, Sonny Corinthos, have a little rendezvous. I think it would be really cool. So, General Hospital, if you're listening,
Yeah.
get in touch with her. But I would really love to
I
see.
love Maurice. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun. But Crystal, I want to thank you for giving me some time today. It was a real honor for me. Been a big fan forever, and you really are a credit to not only the acting industry but coaches everywhere. Because again, these actors can't be as good as they are without the people who are teaching them. And I think the teaching that you do and help these young men and women become great actors, that's where your legacy is. And I really do applaud you for that. And thank you for giving me some time today.
This was terrific, Mike. You would do a good interview. Can I just say I've had a few of these and I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And, again, when you do that seminar in Atlanta, I definitely want to have you back to talk about that because I think that would be a lot of fun. So I hope we could hook up and do that again because it would be great.
Thank you. I would love that.
Thank you. Well, folks, there you have it. I've been a fan of Crystal's for over 30 years. She's a remarkable actress, wonderful human being. But I think the thing that stands out more than anything else, is her will to live, and she's not going to let anything stand in her way. She's a fighter, she's a survivor. And, a great man who passed on many years ago once said, "Don't give up, don't ever give up." Well, Crystal has never given up, and there's a reason she's here today, and she's going to continue to do great things in her life. She's, like I said, a wonderful human being, and we're very fortunate that we've been able to follow her career for so long. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone. All right, perfect.